Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be starting our next unit, and this unit is all about statistics. So, specifically today, we're going to start off with just the first aspect of statistics, which is all about designing a study. So, if you look down in the vocabulary section, you can see that there are three different main types of studies that can be done. And in statistics, usually the data that we're going to gather throughout this unit is going to be done kind of in one of these three ways. So, obviously, the first way that you see is we could have a survey, which is when you actually fill out and answer questions and turn them in. An experiment. Now, this is obviously different in that people aren't filling out like a survey per se, but they're being divided into groups and there's changes that are being made to those two groups. Okay. So the experimental group is one of them, which undergoes the change, whatever it is you're trying to test. And the control group is the one that you don't change anything with. Okay. And then obviously the last one you can see there is an observational study, which is just when you have a group of people that are just being observed and you're not really interacting with those people at all. So when it comes to data and collecting data, today is a pretty important day. So some common terms that you're going to see throughout the statistics unit. The first one is sample. And this is just who is being observed or surveyed. Surveyed, observed, experimented on, etc. You guys get the gist. Now, when we use the term population, this is the bigger group of people. Whoa. 10. There we go. This is the bigger group of people from which you take that sample from. So obviously, if we're talking about if we're serving just our class, the population, that would be the sample. The population would be the entire school population. Okay. And then the last part about this is something called a bias, which is just an error that causes a misrepresentation. All right. So for example, and usually we'll get to that kind of some examples of that in just a minute. So I'm going to come back to this part. But first, let's talk about basically the goal for today is going to be to choose which of those pieces, which of those we're looking at. Are we dealing with an experiment, a survey, or are we dealing with an observational study? So when we say this word description, that's what I'm asking you for. So here it says we have a retro movie theater that wants to determine what genre of movies to play during the next year. They plan to poll 50 random area residents and ask them what their favorite movies are. So the fact that they're polling and specifically asking people things makes this a pretty easy decision. This is simply just a survey. They're asking a group of people questions and collecting those results. Now, the sample that we're working with here is simply the size of the group that you're giving the survey to. So we would say it's going to be 50 area residents. Now, sometimes the population can be not necessarily tricky, but it's not always something that's stated in the problem. So this is something that as long as you can justify your answer, I will probably give you credit for this. Statistics, you guys are going to find it's kind of like some things in English where when you have points of view, in statistics, sometimes the answers to some of these questions are a little vague in that there could be multiple answers that would be accepted. So as long as you can justify your answer, more than likely I can give you credit for something like this. So population, I'm looking at this, it doesn't really give me a general population, but I'm just going to assume that all of the area residents, now we don't know how many, but that's going to be the entire population. They're sampling 50 random area residents. So we're going to say it's all the area residents would be the population. All right. So if you want to pause your video now, I want you to try example 2 on your own. All right. Answers are up. So this one, it says a driving school wanted to determine the main issue drivers face while taking the driving test. They watch and record 30 random people taking the test. So when I see that they're watching and recording, that's instantly a signal that this is definitely an observational study. They're not interacting with these people. They're just watching them taking the test and kind of seeing what's happening in there. So the sample is obviously who's taking the test. That would be the 30 test takers. And then the population, there could be other answers to this. I just said that these were all of the drivers that were taking the test. It could have been 30, who knows? But in this case, that would be our population. Now for the next one, this is kind of all about when you ask people questions. So this a lot of times would be when you're surveying people or when you're collecting data. It says, what are some example of unbiased and biased questions? I'm going to let you guys kind of think of some. We'll do some of these in class together, but down below, we're just going to take a look at some already kind of asked questions and just see if they're biased or unbiased. Now, there's a lot of things that could create something that's biased. So, for example, when you have questions that could be confusing, like there's too many things going on in it, there's multiple questions asked in the same question, something like that would be something that would be a bias that would kind of skew your people answering the survey to kind of answer a specific way. And we don't want that. When you have questions, you want them to be unbiased. So another reason that something would be biased would be something that causes a strong reaction. So like, for example, if we look at some of the ones down here, if I'm reading some of these, let's just start kind of working our way through some of these. So the first one is, what is your favorite type of music? Now I looked at this and again, some of these, as long as you justify it, you can really kind of argue either way. Some of these are more straightforward than others. This one is a pretty straightforward question. This one I would say is unbiased because it's not causing your person answering the question to answer in a specific way. You're just asking a general question. What is your favorite type of music? Okay. Now, like, for example, something that would be biased would be something if you ask the question, how awesome is country music? Something like that. You're kind of implying that they're supposed to answer that country music is awesome when not everyone thinks that way. So that would be an example of a biased question. Kind of like number 4, actually. Number 4, I would say, is biased because the question is, should concerned dog owners vaccinate their pets? And this one kind of plays on your emotions a little bit. It basically is saying that only concerned dog owners are people that vaccinate their pets. And sometimes that's not always the case. Most people actually a lot of people just get them vaccinated because they're supposed to. That's what the doctor says to do. Maybe it's not necessarily that they're concerned. So that would be a reason why this one would be considered biased. Now the next one, it just says, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you support a bill banning plastic bags? I've seen a lot of different answers on this one. Some students have said this is unbiased, and I would kind of agree. It just says, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you support a bill banning plastic bags? Now you could argue that this one could be biased because they don't really explain the scale. So that's why this one, there are a lot of answers that could vary. But like I said, as long as you justify it and give a valid reason, then more than likely you're going to be correct. And the next one I would say is biased. It says, do you feel welcomed by the staff and students at our school? This one, there's a lot of aspects to this question. It says, do you feel welcomed is the first one. And then they're asking about all the staff and all the students at the entire school. That's really not specific. If they mention, like, do you feel welcome by a specific person, then that one might be a little more clear and concise. But I would say that this one would be considered biased. Okay. So kind of putting it all together for this one. I was going to do this guy, number 8. So what I want you guys to kind of see if you can figure out, one of the other things that we're going to be identifying is if I give you an experiment or an observational study that's being performed or a survey, one of the things that we also are going to kind of look to do is identify any flaws in however it's being conducted. So for this one, we're conducting an experiment. And it says a research company wants to conduct a survey to determine whether a new fishing reel is more effective than the old reel. The experimental procedure consists of using the new reel to catch fish in one lake and using the old reel to catch fish in another nearby lake that is randomly chosen. So it says the results, the company concludes that the new reel is twice as effective as the old reel. Now I see flaws. One of the main flaws that I see here is this sentence right here. The new reel, they tried that in one lake and they did the old reel in a different lake. One of the main flaws about this is that there's two different lakes. Oh. There's two different lakes. One, now you could say a way to kind of correct this would be either to test both reels in the same lake, or another option you could say is, for example, you could try testing both reels at both lakes. That would be more of an accurate result when you get those results back, okay? So today, there's not a whole lot of math today. A lot of today is going to be describing and identifying things from situations, all right? So you guys can now stop your video and you guys can now move on to the homework for today.